After the car accident, my adoptive brother thought I had lost my memory. He pointed at his good brother Henry and teased me, "This is your boyfriend." In my previous life, I exposed my adoptive brother's lies on the spot, but I still pestered him. I eventually died tragically in the mental hospital where my adoptive brother secretly detained me. 3 years after my death, the depressed Henry committed suicide by cutting his wrists in front of my grave. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to the day of the car accident. This time, I opened my arms directly to Henry and said, "Honey, hug me." The foster brother opposite accidentally crushed the medicine bowl in his hand. The man in front of me had red eyes and held me in his arms in a hoarse voice. "Well, in the ward, the smell of disinfectant is pungent." My adoptive brother Jack and his good brother Henry stood side by side in front of me. I shook my head, which was about to explode, and was stunned for a moment. I felt that the scene in front of me was extremely unreal. Where is this? Who am I? Jack thought I had lost my memory, so he pointed at Henry next to him and explained with a teasing look. "You are my sister Grace, and this is your boyfriend Henry." I looked at Henry in shock. The man's stern eyebrows were drooped, with a hint of loneliness. He deliberately didn't look at me, but his eyes were vaguely on me. It clearly carries a hint of forbearance. Just like in the previous life. In my previous life, I was in love with my adoptive brother Jack for many years, and I pestered him to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore. After the car accident, he mistakenly thought that I had lost my memory, and in order to get rid of my entanglement, he deliberately said that Henry was my boyfriend. In fact, I did have brief amnesia when I woke up from the car accident. But soon, I returned to normal. I didn't think too much about Jack's teasing. Instead, he insisted on exposing Jack's lies on the spot. Just to prove that I didn't lose my memory. I carefully pulled at Jack's clothes, my eyes wet with tears. "Brother, I didn't lose my memory and I didn't lie." Jack couldn't do anything with me, so he held me in his arms with a stern face. Just like he had done every time I cried for the past 5 years. "I'm sorry, Grace. I made a mistake." I was overjoyed and quickly put that episode behind me. Haunting Jack as usual. Since I was 16, I realized that I had an unusual feeling for my adoptive brother. Every time he falls in love, I deliberately ruin it. The book says that this is due to possessiveness. I have no comment. Jack also condoned my various outrageous behaviors. Many times, he was the one who secretly intervened when dealing with those girlfriends. He indulged me in doing whatever I wanted and also let me cling to him. I was drunk and hugged Jack for a kiss. He didn't push me away. Instead, he straightened his body and let me do whatever I wanted. At that time, I arrogantly thought that Jack liked me too. But I overlooked the most important thing: he never personally admitted his feelings for me. I hugged Jack and kissed him for a long time until he suddenly woke up and ordered me to get out in disgust. Jack touched his swollen lips and raised his lip line playfully. "Grace, how can you like your own brother? You're so perverted." I woke up as if from a dream, as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water over my head. Every limb was stiff and unbearable. I didn't. The voice of explanation gradually faded. The tone of the rhetorical question was abrupt and high. "You don't like me, huh?" The disgust in his eyes tore at my heart. I can't answer that. Secretly, I liked Jack. I am an orphan, and my brother is the only one in the world who is kind to me. How could I not like him? Jack seemed to have discovered my secret, and his disgust for me became even greater. "A pervert like you deserves to be locked up in a mental hospital for reform." My thoughts returned, and I looked at Jack in surprise, with a smile on his face. He was also looking up at me quietly, with no concealment of amusement in his eyes. In just a moment, my whole body was covered with bumps and I couldn't help shivering. My nails dug deep into my flesh and the pain forced me to stay sane. I looked directly at Jack and replied word by word, "I understand, brother. I don't want to have any entanglement with him in this life. Everything came to an end when I died tragically in my previous life. The days in the mental hospital were particularly difficult. Jack comes to see me every 2 weeks. I really couldn't stand being beaten and electrocuted every day, so I cried and begged him to let me go. I cried out with all my might, 'Brother, I was wrong, I don't like you anymore.' Every time, Jack just looked down at me coldly and condescendingly, and his words were without any emotion. 'Grace, you seem to be sick again.' As soon as the words fell, unbearable pain followed. I tried to contact everyone I knew, asking them to get me out. But Jack had already made preparations. He kept my whereabouts a secret and the news could not be passed on. In just half a year, I was tortured to death. After I died, Jack acted like a madman and held onto my body and wouldn't let go. He said he regretted it. He said he likes me. He cried and repeated his awkwardness and fear over and over again. Falling in love with his adopted sister will make others look at him with ill intent. At that time, my soul was standing aside and watching all this coldly. I just felt like vomiting. Even now, I still feel physically nauseous when I see Jack. So I turned my gaze to Henry standing aside. I opened my arms to him and pouted while trying hard to hold back my tears. "Hug me, hubby." Clang. The sound of broken porcelain pieces was particularly harsh in the ward. I glanced sideways and saw that Jack's palm was covered in blood, and the brown medicine mixed with blood was flowing onto the ground. Disgusted, he stood there, the amusement in his eyes gone. Instead, there was endless anger. But I don't have the heart to care about him now. All my attention is on Henry. From the moment he called him husband just now, Henry's eyes quickly turned red. He froze and looked up at me in surprise. A mixture of confusion and excitement surged in his eyes, finally condensing into a deep tremor. His lips moved and his voice was hoarse. He took a few quick steps forward, held me tightly in his arms, and whispered in my ear.
"Yeah."
Jack clenched his injured fist, blood gushing out. He coughed lightly a few times, raised his injured left hand and handed it to me. The smell of blood made me frown. Henry calmly moved me aside, opened his windbreaker and wrapped me tightly. I poked my head out of his arms, and my eyelids were covered by a warm hand again. "Don't look at it, it's disgusting." After saying that, Henry stood in front of me and looked at Jack angrily. The disgust in his eyes was undisguised. "You knew she was afraid of pain and blood, but you still wanted to disgust her on purpose, right?" A strange feeling welled up in my heart. I pushed Henry's hand away and looked up at his pale face carefully. Her facial features were delicate, exactly as she remembered. Looking closely, it seems to be more fierce than before. As far as I can remember, Henry has always been taciturn. This is the first time I have seen such merciless accusations as today. Apparently, Jack also found it incredible. "None of your business." Jack rolled his eyes and reached out his hand shakily, as if expecting my reaction. "Grace, I'm hurt." In the past, I would have been frantically looking for the ointment and applying it to Jack while tears were falling. But now, I shrank a little closer to Henry's arms and glanced at the dirty hands with disgust. "Brother, there are doctors and nurses out there, and I can't treat illnesses." "You?" I interrupted him irritably. "I'm sleepy and want to go home." The corner of someone's mouth accidentally caught sight of him. Like a smug puppy wagging its tail. "There's nothing wrong with my health. The doctor said I just need to go home and rest." Henry refused to let me walk no matter what and insisted on carrying me out. Jack had a gloomy face, and finally exploded at that moment. He held my arm tightly. "Grace, didn't you say you wanted to go home?" I pried open my tightly bound fingers one by one, leaving red marks on my skin. "Yes, I'm going back to my boyfriend's house." "Is that wrong, brother?" "Grace, don't regret it." Jack laughed to himself, almost growling through gritted teeth. "Regret? I only regret not seeing my own heart clearly sooner. I only regret that in my previous life I was like a fool and was fooled by Jack." Henry carried me into the car and carefully fastened my seatbelt. "Start the vehicle, step on the accelerator, and drive away." Along the way, his palm wrapped around my fist and never let go. When I got home, I felt uncomfortable all over and wanted to take a shower. Henry considerately prepared the bath water. "Pull out an unopened bottle of essential oil from your locker." When I opened it, it had the jasmine scent that I like. Then, Henry opened the cloakroom and picked out a set of home clothes with a tag hanging on it. "Fits my size surprisingly well." "I'm a little confused." Henry scratched his head, blushing to his ears. "I bought it when I was shopping and thought it suited me." "Do you just buy so much?" I pointed behind him, at the women's clothing that took up most of the closet. "All are new. They are all the brands I like. Don't get me wrong, I blinked at him, looking forward to what was to come. Henry sighed, looking like he was done pretending. "Is there anything wrong with buying clothes for your girlfriend?" Is this still the Henry in my memory who was self-deprecating and sensitive, and would blush if he spoke one more word to me? In my previous life, I didn't have much interaction with him until I died in a mental hospital. It was only after my death that I could barely glimpse the deep love Henry had for me. In my previous life, my soul was trapped in the apartment where I lived before. After realizing my special feelings for Jack, I moved out of Jack's family. After learning of my death, Henry met with Jack alone to ask for an explanation. Where is the explanation? The latter claimed that I was seriously ill and died. He doesn't even have the right to see the truth. At night, Henry easily cracked the apartment door lock code. I watched in amazement as he barged in and stumbled into my room. When my soul floated over, I saw only a tall figure curled up in a ball, lying on my bed. His back was shaking and there were large stains on the pillow. I wanted to comfort Henry. Don't know where to start? I had no choice but to sit by the bed and look at him quietly. Later, I couldn't help it and reached out to touch his hairy head. Unfortunately, I'm a ghost. Can't really touch Henry. Run your palm through your hair. I stroked the back of his head gently as if I were coaxing a child. Henry, stop crying. If you keep crying, I won't be able to help but kiss you. The delicate face under the palm trembled for a moment. Henry opened his eyes suddenly, and big tears rolled down his cheeks. Then he closed his eyes in despair. Liar, the air fell into silence. Only low sobbing sounds continued to echo in the room. From that day on, Henry lived in the apartment and became my soul mate. Others laughed at him and called him a fool. I think he is a fool too. Because Henry always likes to talk to himself. Sometimes I share happy things to the air, and sometimes I confide my bad mood. I listened quietly on the side. Quietly watching his cold face become wet. Henry was getting thinner day by day. I knew he was sick because there were always big boxes of medicine on the dining table. I advised him to live a good life. Unfortunately, it's useless. He couldn't hear me at all. We spent 3 whole years together day and night. But they are like 2 lonely souls, separated by an insurmountable barrier. Can't be touched, can't be touched, can't be heard. The longer I stay in the human world, the more transparent my soul becomes. I think it won't be long before I completely disappear from this world. Henry still goes out early and comes back late every day. I couldn't leave the apartment and had no idea what he was up to. It was not until the 3rd anniversary of my death that Henry turned on the TV and tuned to the news channel. Before leaving, he looked deeply in my direction. My eyebrows were twitching and I always felt that something was happening. Soon, the TV station broadcast an urgent news. Jack, the head of the Jack family, died in a car accident. The incident was suspected to be a personal grudge and the perpetrator has fled. The police are currently trying their best to hunt down the perpetrators. It's Henry, he's so stupid. I was extremely panicked, and my soul generated tremendous energy, which actually broke through the barriers of the apartment. Following the guidance of some kind of energy, it floated to my grave. Henry hugged my tombstone and cried like a fool. Grace, I finally avenged you. At his feet were several empty medicine bottles and empty beer cans. I was so anxious that I was running around in circles. There is no one in the huge cemetery. No one noticed Henry's abnormality. Henry, I order you not to die. Do you hear me? The almost hysterical roar briefly awakened his consciousness. Henry looked at me deeply, his lips curved into a satisfied smile. You came to pick me up, right? As he finished speaking, he used the dagger to resolutely cut the skin on his scarred wrist. Grace, if there is an afterlife, I will definitely hold your hand bravely. Fortunately, God gave me a chance to be reborn. Looking at the handsome face so close. My face turned red and my eyes were wet. Henry's death scene cut my heart deep. I grimaced in pain. The warm palms gently stroked my face and wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes bit by bit. Is the wound hurting again? The car accident was not serious, and I only had minor injuries. Compared to the injuries I suffered in my previous life, it's nothing. I no longer feel pain. I don't want Henry to know about my rebirth. I nodded and licked Henry's warmth greedily. It hurts so much. It hurts so much. It needs a kiss to get better. Henry licked his lips, his black pupils sparkling. Just a kiss, is that enough? Before I could react, someone grabbed the back of my head. The overwhelming kiss came forcefully. It was as if he wanted to crush me completely. I was kissed so hard that I couldn't breathe. The cell phone rang at an inopportune time. It was Jack calling. I don't want to answer. But the other side seemed tireless and showed no intention of stopping. I wanted to hang up the phone impatiently, but accidentally pressed the answer button. Grace, after thinking about it, I think it would be better for you to go back home and live with your auntie to take care of you. A muffled groan accidentally escaped from the corner of his mouth. Jack is crazy, Grace, what are you doing, answer me. No distractions, I didn't have time to answer, and someone grabbed my finger and hung up the call. Half an hour later, I was still hanging on Henry and couldn't get down. The sound of banging on the door mixed with cursing came from outside. Henry, who gave you permission to touch her? Jack is really noisy and I don't want to pay attention to him. But he doesn't seem to be leaving. I got off Henry in a depressed mood. He rubbed my messy hair and smiled with his eyes curved. Be good, I'll go and chase him away. Henry opened the door with his swollen lips. The door was just opened a crack. Jack rushed in like a madman. His gloomy gaze swept back and forth over me. Finally, it fell on my neck, which was covered with red marks. "You dare to touch her? Henry, you dare to touch her?" Jack yelled, punching the direction behind him with hatred. "Did you know that she has lost her memory? This is taking advantage of someone's misfortune," I exclaimed. Henry turned his head and dodged the incoming fist. Is this still the Henry the First? No? Is he so skillful? He was ruthless, and every punch hit the flesh. In just a few moves, Jack was completely subdued and thrown out. "Go away. Stop pestering her." The door slammed shut. All that was left was a sinister back. When he turned around again, Henry's face regained its usual gentleness. "Didn't that scare you? It's simply breathtaking." I was stunned. "Wrong. There's something wrong with Henry. Are you hiding something from me?" Henry scratched his head and nodded shyly. "Well, since you said you liked it, I practiced it secretly." "What?" The slender fingers pointed to his waist and abdomen. "Love abs? When did I say that?" I remembered that in my previous life, I looked at those neatly shaped abdominal muscles every day. When I could only look at it but not touch it, I did express my desire for it. That's not right. How would Henry know? I looked at the man in front of me suspiciously. Just happened to bump into those eyes filled with smiles. "I know I love pancakes" is your alias. Observe carefully enough. I did use a secondary account to make radical remarks in certain videos. But don't I have any face? My trick was exposed just like that. How can I use my bad ideas on Henry in the future? Forget it, I lost and rubbed my hands excitedly, staring at Henry's hard abdominal muscles with anticipation. Touch. His handsome face quickly turned red. After a while, a response as soft as a mosquito's hum came from above. The next day, I pushed myself up from my abs. Henry's body turned red from all the pressure I put on him. He slept soundly and hardly moved the whole night. When I was still a spirit, Henry and I shared a bed for 3 whole years. But when I turned back into a human, it was the first time I lay with him. Once the first period is over, a feeling of shyness comes over you. I tried to run away with a red face, but he grabbed my ankle and pulled me back to him. His thin lips touched my lips, grinding them playfully. "Are you shy? This wasn't the expression on your face when you asked me to call you master last night." I pushed the person away tremblingly. "I'm hungry." Henry narrowed his eyes slightly, but his fingers did not stop moving. I quickly explained. "I'm hungry." My stomach growled twice at the right moment. Henry withdrew his hand with some disappointment and looked at me leisurely. "But here, I also say I'm hungry." When we finished packing and came out of the room, Auntie prepared lunch and then left. The table is full of my favorite dishes. After dinner, Henry asked me, "Any plans for today?" "I have amnesia and can't remember anything." I teased him on purpose. "Tell me, how did we date in the past?" Henry blushed and shook his head proudly. "You just like to stay with me and never leave me." "So where do we like to go to play?" I don't know if it was my illusion, but Henry's face darkened and a flash of sadness passed through his face. U.S. He fell into deep thought, as if recalling something from long ago. "We love staying home." Stay home. Thinking about that morning, my waist still aches. "You absolutely cannot stay at home today. Henry, let's go shopping at the home furnishing mall." The house is so cold and deserted, I don't like it. Henry doesn't like crowds. There aren't many items in the house, and it's decorated in cool tones, without any hint of homeliness. I want to fill this house with my own colors. It's not just a few pieces of clothing in the closet, but all of it. Because Henry is always worried, he would rush over to check if I disappeared for just a few seconds. Only when he saw that I was fine did he feel relieved and hugged me tightly in his arms. "Grace, I thought I would never find you again." He had tears in his eyes and was breathing heavily. "When I can't see you, I always feel like something is missing. Therefore, I want to fill this gap by invading territory." In just one day, the house has completely changed. I put my favorite stuffed toys on the bedside and sofa. Henry said childish words, but I saw him secretly kneading the toy until it was deformed. The gray bedding was replaced with a sweet pink. The slippers were changed to cute bunny styles. I also picked out new pajamas for Henry, which are a couple style with mine. I also put my favorite fresh-cut flowers in the living room. It is a bouquet of warmly blooming roses. The orange-red color is as beautiful as the warm sun in winter. On the marble countertop in the bathroom, there is a pair of porcelain dolls with their faces pressed together. A boy and a girl. Henry insisted that the girl looked like me, with a round face and was very cute. I would say that boys are like him, silly and easy to get close to. We refused to acknowledge each other's words and neither of us gave in. Finally, they unanimously decided to place the doll next to the mirror. Look in the mirror every day. Until we are willing to admit that we look like porcelain dolls. After taking a shower, we snuggled up to each other and watched a movie on the sofa. Henry brought a fluffy blanket and wrapped me and him tightly in it. The movie is very warm. It tells the story of a pair of young lovers, from secret love to marriage. At the end of the story, the two people lived happily together with a puppy. It's a very heartwarming scene, but I suddenly felt a lump in my throat. If I leave one day, what will happen to Henry? He is the most paranoid person and will definitely be the same as in his previous life. No, I absolutely cannot let him do anything stupid again. I sniffed and held Henry's face solemnly. Henry, shall we get a cat? Or a dog? A hint of alertness flashed across his brows, and Henry grabbed my wrist, holding it tightly in his palm. Why, aren't you the one who dislikes animals the most? Actually, I don't dislike small animals. It's just that the elders in Jack's family don't like it, so I can't like it either. That year, I begged Jack for a long time before he reluctantly agreed to secretly bring a kitten back for me. But before the kitten came into my hands, it was found by its foster mother. She threw my kitten. She scolded Jack for being obsessed with pleasure and being unworthy of being an heir, which disappointed her. He also locked me in a small dark room and asked me to reflect on myself. If I lead Jack astray again, I will be sent back to the orphanage. I don't understand why a kitten can put such a big hat on us. But I didn't dare resist. After all, I really didn't want to be sent back to the orphanage. In order to calm my adoptive mother down, I knelt on the ground and admitted my mistake. I cried and swore never to bring any small animals home again. The foster mother's tense expression finally relaxed. I was locked up for a whole week. When I came out, the kitten had already become a stray cat. I couldn't find it, and feeling sad, I wandered around the park alone. I unexpectedly saw Henry holding a big bowl of cat food and squatting on the ground to take care of the stray cats nearby who were coming to eat. The cold moonlight sprinkled on him as if he was coated with a layer of soft light. That was the Henry the First had never seen before. Henry's background is similar to mine. No, he's not even doing as well as I am. Henry was an unaccepted illegitimate child. His father got drunk and his mother calculated the date and went to bed with him, which led to the birth of him. It can be said that Henry is the most shameful person in the entire Henry family. No one respects him and no one treats him as a human being. Henry has been shrouded in low self-esteem and depression for many years. Only the stray cats and dogs in the park would gently rub against his trouser legs. I think having a kitten for company. If one day, I leave him again. With Henry's sense of responsibility, he would definitely not abandon the kitten. Of course, I won't let him know these thoughts. I kissed the thin lips in front of me. Having a child makes the house more lively. The word child made Henry's eyes tremble. He pursed his lips and couldn't speak for a long time. Okay, Henry. I don't want to let Jack go of what happened in my past life. But Jack's family is powerful, if something happens to me. Henry, you can't do stupid things anymore. The inky pupils enveloped my figure for a long time. It was so quiet around them that only the sound of each other's breathing could be heard. I felt guilty being stared at, so I hung on Henry's neck and urged him on. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a nightmare. In my dream, all I saw was Henry lying in front of my grave, his white cuffs stained with blood. When I struggled to wake up from the dream, the seat next to me was empty. Where is Henry? My heart was so tense that I didn't even have time to put on my shoes. I went out of bed barefoot to look for Henry. There were strange noises coming from the rooftop. My heart sank and I quickly ran upstairs. He flung open the patio door. Henry woke up. Henry was wearing an apron and gloves, and the floor was covered with a thick gardening mat. Raise your head and look at me from a row of colorful blooming flowers. I like every one of them. I have also planted this in my apartment before. After I was imprisoned in the mental hospital, no one took care of the flowers. Henry tried everything he could to revive them. Now, how is he planting flowers? Why not wear shoes? Henry frowned, took off his gloves, and stood up to get my shoes. Then he brought a small stool, placed it next to him, and motioned for me to sit down. Why did you think of planting flowers? The pale and slender fingers scooped up a handful of soil, buried it in the flower pot, compacted it, and poured a pot of water. The pink rose petals are hung with crystal water droplets, which are delicate and beautiful. When the terrace is full of flowers, I can take lots of beautiful photos for you. That picture must be beautiful. Henry, we will get there one day. Henry and I adopted a little orange cat and a yellow and white puppy. Henry has a gentle personality and is indeed better suited to taking care of the two little ones than me. Of course, he also took the initiative to take on housework. He is very busy every day now. There is always a bright smile on her face. I got up in the morning and watered the flowers first, then took care of the two furry kids. After dinner, she would pull me along to take the little one for a walk. After taking a shower, Henry and I watched TV series together as usual. The two furry kids were lying at our feet, purring with contentment from time to time. I am so happy that the person I love most is by my side. I can kiss those soft lips by turning my face. It makes me excited just thinking about it. The corners of his mouth curled up uncontrollably, and he couldn't suppress it. Want to kiss? Wait, what is Henry secretly enjoying? Could it be that he discovered my little secret? Damn it, I hid it very well. His handsome face suddenly came close to him and he kissed him unexpectedly. Henry. Grace, I love you. I thought we could spend more time together. I didn't expect that separation would come so soon. That day, when I came out of the supermarket, I suddenly wanted to drink milk tea, so I asked Henry to go to the garage to drive first. He just left not long ago. A black Pamela stopped in front of me. I recognized it. It was Jack's car. I turned and ran. Two bodyguards in black got out of the car, grabbed me and stuffed me into the car. The driver stepped on the accelerator and sped away. The middle baffle slowly rose up, creating an enclosed space in the back seat of the car. Jack, are you crazy? Let me go back. Grace, I worked so hard to find you, how could I let you go? The tall body pressed down. I was backed into a corner. When I was about to hit the car door, he grabbed me with his big hand and held me in his arms. Cold fingers moved across my waist through the fabric. Jack must be crazy. What is he going to do? Are you going to put me in a mental hospital again? Absolutely not. The fear of being imprisoned in the previous life crawled all over my body. I was so panicked that I couldn't control my shaking. I curled up into a ball, put my hands behind my back, and secretly sent a distress signal to Henry using my cell phone. But I just unlocked my phone. Jack pushed me into the corner, reached in with his long arm, and took the phone from my hand without hesitation. I rushed over to grab it. Jack. What are you doing? Jack raised his hand to hold me and opened the car window with his other hand. Then, in my desperate look, he threw the phone away. No. After doing all this, Jack hugged me tightly with satisfaction, tilted his head and kissed the top of my head. Grace, you are really disobedient. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let you leave me. It won't happen again in the future. We'll be together forever, okay? No, let me go. I struggled hard and slapped Jack hard. But instead of getting angry, he pushed me even closer. He seemed crazy, hugged me and kept talking nonsense. Grace, don't fool yourself, you like me. You are with Henry just to piss me off, because I used him to tease you, right? You are angry that I pretend not to know even though I know your feelings. Grace, I am wrong. No, I'm not your brother. Let's start over, okay? Jack is really crazy. But, Jack, I never liked you. Impossible, you are lying again. During the time I was locked up in the mental hospital, I reflected on myself every day. What are my feelings towards Jack? Seeing him with other women makes me feel lost and jealous. I would even try to drive people away. Not only that, I always silently follow Jack's gaze. I almost greedily hope that he will pay attention to me forever. But I didn't do this voluntarily. It was Jack who guided me for a long time. He indulged my willfulness and deliberately gave me some sweet treats when my mind was wavering. When I suspected internal strife, he acted towards me in a way that was beyond that of an older brother. He never refuted or accepted my advances. This is clearly a long-planned PUA. From the beginning to the end, Jack had feelings for me that went beyond a brother. He refused to admit it, but was tormented by the possessiveness deep in his heart. Just blame everything on me. Jack is a coward. How could I possibly like him? I pushed him away with all my strength and loudly revealed his most embarrassing secret, word by word. Jack, falling in love with his adopted sister, what a pervert. After a lifetime, I can finally return these words to him exactly as they were. Jack, who was pressing on me, paused for a moment, and his eyes quickly became gloomy. Pull hard with your palm. My clothes shredded. A chill invaded my shoulders, and the demon in front of me woke up. Jack grabbed my neck and pressed down inch by inch with his fingertips. Yes, I love you. Every second you spend with Henry, I wish I could take you back. Don't ever think about leaving me. Just like in my last life, Jack wanted to imprison me again. But I won't sit still and wait for death. There was a sharp pain in my lips, and the taste of blood spread wildly in my mouth. I pulled the switchblade from my pocket and stabbed it into the chest of the man in front of me. The next second, he grabbed my wrist and slowly turned the handle of the knife in a circle. Is that enough to relieve your anger, eh? I should have guessed it. Jack is a complete lunatic. The car suddenly slowed down, and the exhaust sound caused by the emergency brake almost pierced my eardrums. Due to inertia, my body leaned forward rapidly. Jack quickly grabbed me into his arms. Perhaps because his wound was pulled, he groaned and growled at the driver in the front seat. Are you looking for death? Young master, there is a car in front of me that is about to force me to stop. A black Maybach? It's Henry. The car in front was driving very fast and closing in. It's quite heroic, with both parties perishing together. If you look closely, you can see that the car in front still leaves a tiny, barely noticeable gap. They are all crazy. Jack is even crazier. Hit him. I don't believe he is not afraid of death. However, he underestimated the human instinct for survival. Faced with two lunatics, the driver was not stupid enough to sacrifice his life. At the moment the two cars collided, the driver quickly stepped on the brakes, turned the car around, and hit the green belt next to it. The car in front stopped quickly. Henry's eyes were blazing with fire. He crawled over as fast as he could and opened the car door. After confirming that I was safe, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then he carried me out and put me down, took off his coat and put it on me. Just wait for me here obediently. Then, Henry dragged Jack out of the car and punched him with his clenched fists. He said nothing, pouring all his anger into his fists. Jack had already been stabbed by me, and when the car crashed into the green belt just now, he subconsciously protected me in his arms. The legs were deformed due to the heavy pressure. Now he was being beaten up by Henry and couldn't even groan in pain. No, if Jack was beaten to death, Henry would be responsible. Stop, I stopped Henry, put my palms together, and tightly wrapped around his hardened fists. Henry, we have to go home. The driver was fine. He called an ambulance immediately and sent the unconscious Jack to the hospital. It was my adoptive mother who came to talk to me about what happened later. After Jack woke up in the hospital, his adoptive mother sent him away on the grounds that he had mental abnormality and needed treatment. As to where he went, I have no idea. Also, not interested in knowing. When Jack was in a coma, I made a backup of everything I secretly recorded in the car and sent it to my adoptive mother. After she received it, she immediately made a deal with me. If this document were to be exposed, Jack's guilt would be proven. Besides, bullying your adopted sister is not a good reputation. Jack, a madman, doesn't care about the reputation of Jack's family. But adoptive parents will not sit idly by and watch their life's work go to waste. Of course, Henry also had a hand in this. He got a copy of Jack's criminal evidence and sent it to his adoptive father. The two old people know what to do. 3 months after Jack was secretly sent away, the Jack family was tricked, and their capital chain broke, leading to a major economic crisis. It had to face the situation of being acquired by someone else, Henry. The two little guys ate until they were round and then took a nap in their respective nests. I huddled closer to Henry and poked his waist with my hand. Henry, when did you collect the evidence? Henry got angry and ignored me. He blamed me for deliberately getting close to Jack even though I knew he had bad intentions. That day, I sent Henry away on purpose because I saw Jack's car nearby. Don't be angry. If I told you in advance, you would definitely not agree. Did you think of me at that time, huh? It's really hard to coax a husband when he's angry. I put on a flattering smile and hung on Henry's neck, acting coquettishly. Of course I have thought about it. What do you think? I was wondering what delicious food my husband would prepare for me in the evening. Henry was furious. He held my waist tightly and rested his head on my shoulder. The coolness spread out from point to point, wetting my shoulders bit by bit. The strength on his arms gradually increased, and I was almost unable to breathe. It hurts. Do you know how scared I was at that time? Henry choked up, his body shaking slightly. What should I do if I never see you again? Grace, why do you always leave me alone? I won't abandon him. If Jack hadn't let me go, that audio clip would have immediately been on all the major news platforms. By then, the entire Jack family will suffer. Good boy, I'm back, right? I'm armed. I comforted Henry and raised my hand to rub his furry head. The crying in my arms became even hoarser. What should I do if he hides you again? What should I do if I can't find you? Silly boy, Henry, if you cry again I will kiss you. Henry's head moved away from my shoulder. His eyes were red, like a weak little rabbit. It makes people want to bully. Liar, I'm not a liar. I licked my lips and moved forward. Sweet and soft, Henry. I have always liked Grace. Everyone laughed at me and said I was a bastard. I have no family and no friends. Henry's servants did everything they could to torture me behind my back. Only Grace would notice me. 5-year-old Grace grabbed a bag of cookies and stuffed it into my arms. Before this, I had never eaten cookies. When I was so hungry that I couldn't stand it anymore, I could only hide in the kitchen and eat leftovers secretly. That bag of cookies is in the shape of small animals. The aroma was so fragrant that even though my stomach was growling with hunger, I couldn't bear to eat it. Grace ordered me with her hands on her hips. Henry, if you don't eat your cookie, I'll kiss you. Liar, absolutely a liar. I didn't eat the cookies, and Grace didn't kiss me. Later she changed her words and said, if you eat the cookies obediently, I will kiss you. Still a liar, Grace is different from me. Although she is an adopted daughter, she has adoptive parents who love her and a brother who dotes on her. She can do whatever she wants in Jack's family, because no matter what happens, Jack will back her up. On the night when she turned 18, Grace blinked her sparkling eyes and looked at Jack in the distance with passion. She told me that she liked Jack and Jack liked her too. There was a dull pain in my heart. I think as long as Grace is happy. But suddenly one day, I couldn't find her anymore. My world fell into darkness. I questioned Jack, but he just avoided the question. Not long after, news of Grace's death came. I lost her forever. If only I had been braver. I hid in the apartment where Grace lived when she was alive, and her figure was reflected in every inch of it. In my previous life, I was in love with my adoptive brother Jack for many years, and I pestered him to the point where he couldn't stand it anymore. I swore countless times that if it happened again, I would definitely protect Grace. Fortunately, I was truly reborn. Reborn when I was 18. This time, I used all means to gradually gain a position in the Henry family. One day, I will make everyone in Jack's family pay the price. It didn't take much effort to deal with Jack's family. After all, I did this for 3 full years in my previous life. After my death, nothing good happened to everyone in Jack's family. The same is true in this life. But Grace still treats me as the inferior and cowardly me in my previous life. She still enjoys the sense of accomplishment of protecting me. I have to pretend, as long as she is happy. There were several times when I almost couldn't pretend. Fortunately, she didn't find out. That day in the hospital, Grace reached out to me. I couldn't hold back any longer and hugged her. She said, "Honey, give me a hug." I responded secretly in my heart. "I miss you so much."